The inflation of food has been higher than inflation since 2021. Some people would say that you've come to this far too late, and only because you were forced to respond after the opposition parties have been hammering you for months.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. Cabinet Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne made an appearance on Liberal-friendly CBC, only to find out that the reporter was not so friendly and not putting up with his laughable Liberal lies.
Let's get into it.
It's not okay that our biggest grocery stores are making record profits while Canadians are struggling to put food on the table. So Minister Champagne will be calling on the heads of large grocers to come to Ottawa with a plan to address the rising cost of food. And we expect to hear from them by Thanksgiving on what their plan is to stabilize prices. And let me be very clear. If their plan doesn't provide real relief for the middle class and people working hard to join it, then we will take further action, and we are not ruling anything out, including tax measures.
So we wanted to provide you a little bit of context for this interview and remind everybody, not that you needed it, of Justin Trudeau boasting 3 weeks ago that they were going to hold the grocery store owners to account, right? And if all else failed, they would tax the grocery CEOs. That'll show them. Never mind the fact that that would just end up raising the cost of food even more. But we won't talk about that because we've already done a video on that. Anyhow, adding further context to this interview is a story that Fox found of CTV covering how the food banks are actually coping this Thanksgiving.
We used to see 65,000 client visits per month. That number soared to 275,000. And as a result, we had to go from spending $1.5 million a year to $22 million a year just to maintain the existing service levels. It's been incredibly difficult. And so as people are gathered around the Thanksgiving table, we're hopeful that they'll remember those who are food insecure, whose right to food is not being realized, and decide to do something about that.
So that's Neil Hetherington. He's the CEO of the Daily Bread Food Bank, and they have locations across Toronto. But what's important is the fact that he's saying that they've seen the number of people coming to their food bank grow by 5 times, from around 67,000 to 275,000. That's insane. And they used to have to spend $1 million a year to keep up with demand. Now they're having to spend $20 million to keep up demand and make this work. This wasn't like this a couple of years ago.
This wasn't like this under Harper.
For sure it wasn't like it under Harper. Now, if you recall what Trudeau said in his press conference, he didn't say that we're going to make the grocery chains bring down food prices. He said we're going to stabilize them. Stabilize means stop going up.
Well, the only way you're going to do that is to stabilize inflation. And how are you going to do that when you keep pumping out these carbon taxes and ridiculous just charges for Canadians? Housing's gone up, food's gone up, everything's gone up, and a lot of it is due to that carbon tax.
And inflation's at 4% again this month.
But, Chrystia Freeland told us 2 months ago that she stopped inflation in its tracks, didn't she?
Fixed it. Nothing to see here. So, this is your context. They promised that they would stabilize food prices by Thanksgiving.
Today.
The food banks are basically out of food, and there's fewer Canadians to actually donate. So you have less people donating and more people consuming. That's a recipe for disaster. And Philippe Champagne and Chrystia Freeland and Sean Fraser, they came out the other day to talk about the plan that they're going to launch to stabilize the housing crisis and solve the food price crisis. let's see how that went.
Minister Champagne, thank you for making the time. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be with you on this Sunday.
So you met with the heads of the 5 major grocery chains. They came back to you with plans to try and stabilize prices. What kinds of things have they proposed to you?
Well, first of all, that was a first in Canada. You know, you're right, Rosemary. I called them in Ottawa to express the frustration of 40 million Canadians and say basically enough is enough, and you have to do something to help us stabilize prices. What I introduced last week was a 5-point plan. You know, one of them is the commitment from the grocers. Some of the things we've seen before, but I would say expanded and certainly for a longer time, talk about price freeze, discounted basket. But this is just one of the things we've said. You know, the best way to stabilize prices in the short, medium, and long term is really to have a more competitive environment in Canada. So that's why we said we're going to have the consumer, the Bureau of Consumer Affairs, so that in a way we can track what they said. We can also look at shrinkflation. You know, a lot of people have been wondering, you know, kind of same packages. I take pasta, but instead of 120 gram, it's 100. We're going to make sure that we push the international manufacturer. Remember, I met Nestle, Unilever. The code of conduct on grocery, because the smaller guys say this is key for transparency. Then we talked about data, a bit like the U.S. is doing. They call that the U.S. food dollars, so that we have a better sense as Canadians. And finally, the landmark competition reform, because actually, if you ask me, what's going to have the most impact is really if we as, you know, consumers, you and I and millions of viewers, where we decide to spend our dollar, which banner, if we go there or there, that's going to have the most impact on them responding to the needs of Canadians.
I just want to start this by saying that there are few reporters that I dislike more than Rosemary Barton. She is so pro-liberal, it drives me nuts. And I know you guys are going to sit here and go, oh, well, say for Fox, you guys are pro-conservative. Yeah, we are, but we're also not reporters. We're seriously just a husband and wife team who like running our mouths.
But we also call bullshit when we see it. Now, the interesting thing in what Fox said is if you look at Rosemary's body language, she seemed to be getting kind of frustrated at the
Well, Champagne wasn't giving any answers. He was just kind of giving the same wishy-washy bullshit that they always give. And the first thing he's like, oh, well, you know, first I want to say this is a first for Canada, and yay, let's pat ourselves on the back for this thing that nobody even knows what it is that I'm congratulating myself for.
Well, and the other thing is he opened with, like, innovation is in his ministerial title, just so everybody knows. Now, he talks about his 5-point plan that he was talking to the grocers about, and some of the things that we're talking about is price freezing. Are you kidding? So your idea is don't put prices up anymore. Like, this is not innovation.
Well, and as I've discussed in our previous videos on this topic, grocery stores have a really razor-thin profit margin. So if they're operating at 4% and the government is telling them, oh, well, you have to freeze your prices, other things are going to have to suffer to maintain that profit margin. People are going to get laid off. They're going to get reduced hours. Maybe the store is going to be open fewer hours so that they don't have to pay the staff to work those hours. Other things are going to suffer. You can't just say keep your prices the same and expect everything to stay the same.
Well, and then he says, oh, well, maybe we have like a basket discount of your groceries. Okay, so what? You're going to say everything, you're just going to discount the basket as a whole, 5% off of everything? Well, here's the thing. Remember, the grocery stores were making their record profits not off of food, but off of the cosmetic and pharmaceutical areas, right? Because everyone was panic buying all of that medication, and everyone's going back to work, so they're buying all kinds of cosmetic products because people weren't using those over the last couple of years.
I definitely wasn't.
Now they are. So what do you think's going to happen if the government, force the grocery chains to do these things, like put in discounts across your baskets and reduce specific food item prices here and reduce specific food items here, absent of giving them a subsidy to do that, which I wouldn't put it past the Liberals, then what do you think is going to happen? Well, the grocery chains are going to turn to their profitable section and say, I guess we're increasing prices on cosmetics. I guess we're increasing prices on certain medications. That's what's going to happen. So overall, your bill is not going to go down because you still need those other things.
Well, and even if it's not pharmaceuticals and cosmetics, what about, aluminum foil or Tupperware containers?
Garbage bags,
yeah.
whatever.
Just whatever other things aside from food that they sell at the grocery store.
Yeah, they will find it. Trust me, they will find it. This is not the way to go about doing this. It absolutely is not. The first thing to do is to cut the carbon tax. And you know what? It wouldn't surprise me if that's what the grocery chain CEOs did and suggested that. But notice they didn't have this meeting in front of the cameras.
Of course not.
Right? Because they were probably afraid, the government, they were probably afraid that that's what the grocery chains were going to suggest.
Well, if I was a grocery store CEO, that's exactly what I would suggest.
Yeah. Cut down the cost of my supply chain, please. Then I can cut down the cost of your food. No problem.
Because it's not just, the trucks that bring the food to the grocery stores. It's the farmers who have to pay the carbon tax, and then to ship it from the farms to the distribution centers, and then to ship it from the distribution center to the grocery store. And then for you to have to go buy it, you're paying carbon tax on the whole supply chain from the farmer straight to your table.
And it's all compounded, right?
All of it.
It's every single step is compounded because everyone needs to cover their costs. So, yeah, this doesn't wash. So let's see what Rosemary had to say.
Okay, let me ask you a few questions about what you've said there. Do you anticipate then that prices will actually come down on some goods? Did they make any guarantees to lower prices? And can you give people a sense on what kinds of goods they could see that?
That's the magic question, Rosemary, right there. Will prices come down? Pretty sure we all know the answer, but let's hear it anyway.
Well, the mission I give them was to stabilize prices.
Yeah.
You've seen, Rosemary, we've seen food price has increased more than inflation, and that's a problem. It's a problem for families every Thursday or like me every Saturday.
Many hours later.
But then it's really an appeal to all the consumers out there, all of us, to say, listen, let's watch each of them and let's direct our dollar to the one which is giving us best value for our money.
Well, but then why are you needed at all?
Like I said, I don't like Rosemary, but that was good.
Right?
Credit where credit's due, right?
Yeah. Why are you needed at all then if we're just basically relying on, what's the word? Starts with this, capitalism. Like,
Because they have to make it look like it's the Liberals who are doing something.
yeah, absolutely.
When the only thing they've done is create these conditions with this asinine carbon tax.
Well, I think
if the responsibility is going to come back to the consumer,
someone needs to pick the fight. I would say because someone needs to fight. No one expects miracles, but they expect someone to fight. So I'm bringing the fight on behalf of 40 million Canadians and say, by the way, we want plans. We want to follow up on that. We want to take the international manufacturers. We want to provide more data. I spoke to the Independent Grocer Association, the 6,900. They said, Minister, the Grocery Code of Conduct and the data, that's going to help us to balance our negotiation with the bigger brands. So it's really being a catalyst and having the eyes of 40 million Canadians on the grocers now and say, you better deliver because we're all watching you.
Yeah, although also on you, because now you're also going to have to deliver too, right? So how
I'm
soon
doing
should
that on behalf of Canadians, actually.
Yeah, but how soon should Canadians expect to see some of these prices go down?
We've
How long are you
seen-
willing to give them?
Notice how Champagne is trying to just continue talking. Just continue talking. And he's saying a lot of nothing. But he's trying to just continue talking to be done with the interview and to extend his answers so there's very few questions. Because there's only a certain amount of time in the segment that they can use.
But, again, props to Rosemary. I haven't seen this before, but props to Rosemary because she's not letting him get away with it. Usually she's really pro-liberal, but I've noticed like a lot of the CBC reporters are just doing a 180 and they're really going after them because I think they know their jobs are going to be on the line if they don't show some conservative support.
Yeah, don't tell them that it's futile, that Pierre's probably already drawing plans for what's going to replace the CBC building. Just saying. But nobody told them that, so they keep doing their job.
Oh, well, listen, no one it's not like a switch, It's not like you say, oh, you flip a switch and then prices stabilize. This is something that's going to take weeks and months, and I'm going to be on their back. If you ask me when we're starting to see things, I think in the coming days and weeks, because I've seen some wants to put this promotion, the other one said we're going to do this if they do that. So you're seeing a movement. I think what we have achieved, Rosemary, is kind of to be a catalyst for the frustration of Canadians. And I can call them to Ottawa to speak on behalf of all your viewers, but then it's collectively and us pushing them. If you ask me, am I going to be happy? Not soon, because I want to see more. But it's only day 4 of what we have, started. But this is going to be a journey to make sure that Canadians have, best value for their money.
Day 4? Have you not been paying attention, Champagne? Day 4? This crap's been going on for 2 years.
What else has been going on for 2 years, Cypher?
Yeah, the NDP coalition.
Well, the carbon tax as well.
So, dude, day 4. Yeah, we're fighting on behalf of Canadians. Give me a break.
Canadians don't want your help. Canadians just want to go about our lives. We don't want this stupid carbon tax. We just want to go back to the way things were before you Liberals got here.
We needed these price increases to not start. Never mind continue for 2 years. What have you been doing for 2 years?
Spending money is what they've been doing for the last 2 years. For the last 8 years.
I can't say what I was going to say.
You say you are there to express the frustration of Canadians, but as you well know, the frustration of Canadians has been ongoing for some time. The inflation of food has been higher than inflation since 2021. Some people would say that you've come to this far too late, and only because you were forced to respond after the opposition parties have been hammering you for months.
Bingo. The only reason they're doing anything now is because of the polls. Full stop.
Well, and that seems to be the MO for this government. Justin has like this vision in his head, this ideology that he's driven by, and he puts it in at all cost. And then anything else that his government does is reactionary almost when it's too late. Like, look at this housing crisis. They built fewer homes this year than they did during lockdown in 2020. And now it's a problem because, again, this government is reactionary. They don't care the problems that their ideology causes until it's so big that Canadians can no longer look away.
You respond to what Canadians want. I mean, it's not about the opposition. It's really what Canadians want.
Well, that's fine, but consumer inflation, food inflation has been high since 2021.
And I'd say it's always a good day to fight for Canadians. I mean, no one is going to, complain and say, oh, they're taking the fight now.
Yes, we frickin' are. We absolutely are going to complain that you're taking the fight now. Look at how many Canadians have been starving. Look at how many Canadians are destitute. Look at how many Canadians are living in their frickin' cars. Look at the state of Canada. You think people aren't going to complain that you're only tackling this now? If you don't think that, Champagne, you haven't been paying attention to the polls. Why do you think the Conservatives are soaring in popularity right now?
Well, and I think they are paying attention to the polls because that's the only reason they're doing anything. That's the only reason they're talking housing or talking groceries, is because Canadians cannot take it anymore and are just dropping support for Liberals in record numbers.
Like, this is just beyond ridiculous at this point. And she even asked him, how long is this going to take? Well, it could take days, it could take months. Okay, so you don't know. And if you don't know, that means you don't really have a plan, because you would know that if you had a plan.
Well, because the CEOs of the grocery chains probably told him to go kick rocks, drop the carbon tax or go kick rocks.
Pretty much. And what are the Liberals going to do? Put a tax on them? Let's see how well that goes. It's always a good day to fight for Canadians. How about it's always a good day to have an election?